Hi everyone and welcome to episode 41 of the ITSM crowd. Today we've got a VeriSM focused episode, so I'm really pleased to be joined by two of the VeriSM lead authors and also a VeriSM early adopter. If you haven't seen the buzz about VeriSM, then I can only think you've not logged onto social media for a while, because everyone's been talking about it, and it's certainly a project that I'm absolutely thrilled to be involved with. So today's a good chance to kind of catch up on where we are and also hear a little bit from someone who is actually starting to work with the VeriSM model. So the first thing I'm going to do is ask our panel to introduce themselves. So if we can start with you, Johan, please, if you can just tell us who you are and where you've come from.
Hi everyone, Johan Buerta from a very gloomy and dark Johannesburg with thunderclouds outside, so apologies for the light on only one side of the face here. So I've been in the IT industry for yonks, and the last 5 years or so, I think our focus has changed quite a lot, helping organizations to rapidly see results for innovative products in their environment. That's more or less my background. And currently, as you gathered, I'm working on the practical book for VeriSM, and hopefully that would be fun and usable by all.
Perfect, thank you. And Suzanne?
Hi, Suzanne Van Hove, sitting in Louisville, Kentucky today. Kind of gloomy here as well, but it's typical April in the United States, I guess. Very much looking forward to the start of the Kentucky Derby Festival and the big horse race that's coming along. I am one of the lead authors for both books, actually. Very honored to be working on both and looking at the practical side of the VeriSM approach and the model, and working hard on getting that put together, and hopefully you all will find it as usable as you read through the second book. So happy to be here.
Thank you. And Steve?
Good afternoon, Claire. Afternoon, everybody. I'm Steve Leach from good old Norfolk in the UK, where it is unseasonably hot today, bizarrely. I'm head of service for a company called 6.6 Cloud Gateway, and I'm pleased to have this opportunity in a little while to tell you about how, as an early adopter of VeriSM, we're developing a fit-for-purpose service management model for our cloud startup products. I've been in and around the service management industry for well over a quarter of a century, which you can probably tell looking at me, and I've found the opportunity to do it actually from scratch, using something new for startup. Fascinating and challenging and exciting, and I hope some of that comes across later.
That's awesome. Thank you, Steve. It's not often in the UK we get to be the ones bragging about the weather. It's a nice feeling. I'm going to enjoy this one. Okay, so I think maybe, Suzanne, I'm going to start with the question for you, because you have been involved with both of the VeriSM books, so you were there right from the beginning of the project. You know, Johan, you were on the author team for the first book as well. Can you, for our audience, just kind of briefly introduce VeriSM and why we're actually working on this book at the moment?
Yeah, first of all, I think I'm going to say that it's a long time coming. So service management, you know, starting off in or getting recognition in the IT organization as trying to deliver services, that concept of ensuring that technology meets the needs of the customer at that point in time, and bringing the customer into the IT organization. And myself working in that industry for, gosh, almost 20 years now, I started to see where, you know, it wasn't enough. And I think that's where VeriSM has come by, saying, hey, we're ready for the next evolution of what service management should be. And notice I didn't say IT service management, but rather service management as a whole, because it is the organization. It's the organization that that's making the statement, that's being the service provider. And so as such, the entire organization must be involved, and it's not just the IT department anymore. Don't get me wrong, very critical input, because, you know, what doesn't sit on IT these days, it seems like. But we have to have the input from the other organizational capabilities to make it work. And I think the best example, Claire, you came up with when we were working on the first book, and said, you know what, when I write a contract with a vendor and to get a service, I don't write the contract with the IT department. And I'm like, oh my God, you're right. Why do we blame IT for everything that goes wrong or right within a service delivery when it's actually the entire organization? So, it's moving it away from one department, one capability, but making the service provider the organization. And I think that's the biggest change, and especially with the way technology is being used these days, and the services that are being delivered, how much they sit in technology, and how much we're trying to exploit what we can learn from the data that we can gather, and how can we make services better, stronger, faster, leaping tall buildings, the whole thing. It has to be the organization. And I think that's why I've, kind of gotten involved with this and then stayed with it, because it's the next evolution. It's how do we continue to evolve as an economy and as an environment in delivering products and services that people need. So to me, that's very exciting.
I think that's an amazing and passionate answer, sir. Thank you very much for that. So Johan and Suzanne are the two kind of lead authors working on this book, and I'm involved as well as the chief architect. So a lot of what I'm doing at the moment is going out and talking to organisations who are working in a digital first way and collecting stories to help people. And Suzanne and Johan are kind of working really hard to put the structure of the book together. So Johan, if I can come to you now and maybe talk a little bit about what you're working on as an author and the kind of questions that you're hoping to answer. You're on mute, Johan.
Apologies. So the first part of the book is really setting the scene. So all the real work actually starts when you physically build services or products and stuff like that, and that's the part of the book that Suzanne is working on. So my job is to make sure that you've got all the requisite things in place to be able to build good products and services in the digital world. So we talk a lot about things that you need to do from a governance and oversight perspective, but then the last week, I've sort of spent a lot of time talking about things like, what is digital? What is this environment that we work in? How does it affect the way that we do products and services? And why are consumer behavior changing? And how do we react to that? So in future, how do you identify what it is that you will offer? So what are these services and products that you need to do? How do you know it will work? How do you know people would want it? When you think about all of the options out there, how do you make sure that you stay ahead of the pack? How do you unearth opportunities to break somebody else's business model and to be a real disruptor? And that's essentially, I think if you've got that idea stream feeding into the physical part where you go and build a product or build a service and get it out to the market and get people to actually get the value of this thing, then your organization will win.
Sounds good. And I think I see your part of the book, the part that you're working on, is really providing a lot of context, because when I speak to people about digital transformation, there are a lot of people who are quite cynical about it, but I think you've only got to look at the impact to organizations. Even if an organization isn't looking at any kind of digital transformation now, it does need to start thinking about what impact that could have on its structure, on the skills it needs in the future, because the pace of change is just accelerating. So Suzanne, tell us a little bit about the part of the book that you're working on.
Okay, so I have the part of the book that people have had the most questions about, I think. They're going, what is this mesh? We have in our model, we deliver a model that is, I'm going to say, has some height to it. So our foundation is governance. which is what a part of the book that Johan is working on right now, and trying and making that real to the development of principles, which gives us guidelines on how we should be organizing and producing as an organization. And then there's the mesh. And this is a concept that I think has got a lot of people struggling, because what it's saying is the mesh is telling us what resources, environment, the environmental conditions, the management practices, and the emerging technologies, and how do they all work together? And people say, okay, I get this concept of the mesh, but how does this help me deliver products and services? And so that's my part of the book. And I'm having a blast with it, to tell you the truth. It's great to say, okay, folks, you don't have to develop something new. It's thinking differently. And I think that's the best part of VeriSM. And I think that's one of the big rumors that have gone out, is saying, oh, VeriSM's replacing every, management practice known to man, and we have to dump everything to address this. So why do I even want to do it? Well, that was one of the key points in the first book, was to say, don't make me lose my investment, which is exactly what, this is about. So with this mesh, it's understanding what are the capabilities we have organizationally wide. What kind of culture impacts do we have? What kind of knowledge impacts do we have? What management practices are out there? In book one, we were on a pretty tight time crunch, and book one turned out to be a little bit more technical than what we wanted it to be. In this book, we've actually brought in some business management practices and showing how they make a difference. Because again, it's going back to the organization as that service provider. And then also, because it is about a digital transformation, it is about exploiting what we can get, or the gains that we can get from technology. It's how do we combine them all? And so that mesh gives us the options. And then we use our good practices that we have developed over time, merge if we need to with some of these other progressive practices. So can we trim it down, make it more agile, or make it more lean, or address a more iterative approach to a service delivery? Well, how do I do that in my traditional flow of activities? Well, we're going to try and point you in the right direction in that way. And then how does it merge in with some of those business practices that are out there in what they're doing, so that the language becomes, I'm going to say, similar, so that we're all looking at being a service provider. So that's my side of the book. And so it's fascinating. There's just a lot of options that are out there. And I'm going to make one statement here. This book is not going to be the be-all, end-all, the only way to do VeriSM. It is going to be the organization and saying, what is my governance? What principles am I trying to stay within? And what resources do I have? And now how can I put them together to have the best possible solution for the entire service provider, that organization? It is not just an IT activity. And I think that's the hardest thing that people are trying to get over the hump with, is to moving this up higher in that the realm of things. It is the umbrella. It's not one vertical within an organization trying to move or support the entire organization.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point, and one of the kind of the benefits of VeriSM. I think it's worth mentioning as well, just before we move on and start talking to Steve, that what you can't see on this hangout is the fact that working with Suzanne and Johan and myself, we have a team of more than 70 authors, contributors, reviewers now as well. So we're running a massive author group. We've got a Slack going. We've got weekly calls. We've got content review happening constantly. So again, just like we did with the first VeriSM book, we really are making the effort to make this as inclusive as possible and to turn out something that is going to, be great for everyone. Because after we published the first VeriSM book, the question we got was, Yeah, this is fantastic. Now, how do I do it? And this is what we're gonna try and work on here. But I want to switch now because I'm really delighted to be joined by Steve Leach from 6Point6, who is one of our VeriSM early adopters, who is going to be contributing a case study to this second volume. And I'll just remind the people who are watching live that if you've got any questions you want to ask Steve, just pop them onto Twitter with the hashtag ITSM crowd, and we will pick those up and we will get to them. But Steve, I think, let's start with the basics. Why do you think VeriSM is a good approach for you? What was it that attracted you to VeriSM?
Okay, Claire, thank you for the introduction. I work for a company called 6.6 Cloud Gateway, which is a company within a company. The company we work within is called 6.6, and they offer consultancy in big data, cybersecurity, and digital transformation. And as part of digital transformation, the idea of a product to connect any enterprise seamlessly through a secure gateway to their chosen cloud provider was devised, and that's known as Cloud Gateway. And basically, it's been around for a little while, but it's still the status of a startup. So I was brought in because of my 25 years of expertise in service management. Now, I discovered VeriSM about between sort of 6 and 12 months ago through things like LinkedIn and the ITSM website. And then through a colleague in Vodafone, who you know well, I was introduced to you. And when I started to talk to you, I thought to myself, much as I am passionate about ITIL, and going back to what Susanna said, that doesn't mean that ITIL is not still relevant. It is, but it hasn't been refreshed for 10 years. Now, it won't be a secret if I say what everybody else has said, that ITIL is out of step with things like cloud computing, DevOps, Agile, and what have you. And there's a fantastic quote that I've shared with you. When I first met one of our DevOps colleagues, he looked me straight in the face and he pointed at me and he said, ITIL is the enemy of DevOps. Now, I've worn that on my sleeve ever since. I think it's fantastic. I shall take that to my grave, and I thank him for that. And I thought to myself, why is he saying this? Well, why he's saying this, Claire, is you can't go to somebody who's been a sort of an architect, a DevOps specialist who's been working in an agile way and say, I want you to stop what you're doing. I want you to develop a service design package. I want to see a capacity plan, an availability plan, a continuity plan. I want all contracts placed. I want all SLAs signed. Life is not like that. We don't work that way. So the great thing about VeriSM is it says to me, okay, the traditional governance provided by something like change management and the traditional customer-facing processes of having a single point of contact service desk, having incident management, request fulfillment, and problem management, those still have a role to play when we get to the response stage. But right up front, we've got to be more flexible. So building this mesh that Susanna was talking about, whereby you ally the best of the new and the best of the old, it just struck to me that the timing was perfect. I've joined a startup company. I'm looking for a service management technique and approach that gives us what we want in this day and age, while still recognizing that customers out there, when something breaks, they want it fixed. So to me, Claire, it was just perfect. The way it comes up with, it describes concept that we've heard about, like shift left, like lean, like agile and DevOps. It plays exactly to what our developers and designers need, while giving us a bit of governance and the comfort of knowing that if something goes wrong or our customers want something, we can fall back on 25 years of proven best practice. So it's about combining ITIL, which is the old, with the new techniques and management practices. That's why it stuck out like a sore thumb to me as being the thing I needed, and the timing was perfect.
And I think, for us as an author group, that was really wonderful to hear, because Suzanne and Johan will remember we had the conversations very early on about the fact that we really didn't want to just be putting another framework out into the marketplace. We thought we needed a new way of looking at things and a way to let organizations, merge their ITIL processes with DevOps. And now, as Suzanne's describing in the new book, we'll be talking about business practices from all the way across the organization. Just like lean has moved into the IT space from manufacturing, we're talking about how all the parts of the organization can learn from each other. Do you think the fact that you're a startup type company had any impact on your decision to choose VeriSM?
I most definitely think it did, Claire, because by being a startup, it's all about risk management. Being a startup in its own nature is risky. adopting something like VeriSM as an early adopter, you take the risk that it is early, it's not yet fully mature, it hasn't yet been adopted and implemented in the same way as ITIL has. But because we're completely acceptance of risk, the way I look at it is this: there's the risk is mitigated by the fact that the book is being written and contributed to by so many professionals, that it recognizes Agile and DevOps, and that the back end of it, the right-hand side, if you like, moving left to right, the service management, the ITIL side of things is still there, which reduces the risk because that's well proven. So I think the fact that it is a startup and we're taking risky decisions every day means this was just one more risk, but it was a manageable, understood and acceptable risk. So yes, I think it did help, definitely help.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And again, you know, one of the different things about VeriSM is this idea that it's an evolving service management approach as well, because I think historically there's a lot of organizations come a bit unstuck trying to perfectly implement ITIL or become the perfect DevOps organization, whereas VeriSM is much more about bringing in that concept of experimentation and evolution, and that allows, you know, maybe the way you work in service management to grow as the company grows as well. So I think that's a really relevant point. So tell us a little bit more about your VeriSM approach and what you're doing at 6.6.
Okay, well, at 6.6 Cloud Gateway, what we've done is they're the first thing, being the new boy in a young company of very young, high-flying things, and being the old guy who's been around a bit, lovely bit of banter going, but it's a terrific team. Now, what I had to do then is, first of all, not being technical, I wanted to know just enough about the product to know what it did, what the outcomes it delivered to the customer. And that meant, you know, understanding a little bit about the cloud technology and what it does. Then I wanted to understand our organization. What capabilities have we got? And this is where I found your book very useful when it started to talk about T and I-shaped professionals, this conversation you and I had the other day. So what we've got is a core of T-shaped professionals who have a fundamental skill in one particular specialism, myself obviously being ITIL, but we've also got a grounding in other areas. So, you know, I've done TOGAF, project management, various other things. So what we've done is we've established a core of people who've been recruited by personal recommendation rather than going to the recruiting world. So we've built this core of people who work very well together as a team. So I understood what the product was. I then had to understand the organization. I had to understand a bit about the market we're working in. And then the idea is we've embarked on this journey. So by having a company whose ethos is every customer is special and every customer gets their own version of Cloud Gateway and their own support model. One size does not fit all. I've realized that a long time ago working for big corporates. One size does not fit all, therefore we need to be flexible. Therefore, one of our service management principles is we want to be a company who customers enjoy working with, and we put enjoy in big capital letters. That means we've got to have an excellent CX and UX, excellent customer relationships. That means that we can start to establish the service management principles. So with that being principle number one, that leads you to your recruitment strategies of realizing what sort of people you need. It leads you to realize what sort of governance and management practices you need. And then to go back to what Susanna said, I said, well, I won't call it the mesh, because obviously introducing that initially, people, like Susanna said, people don't know what you're talking about. So I said, okay, let's not talk about a mesh yet. Let's talk about what we've got and how we do it. So I went to talk to our designers and developers about Agile and DevOps and Shift Left, and people like me are going to come along and support it. And very importantly, the marketing people, because I noticed one of the things that VeriSM says is marketing. Very, very important to get that in at the provide stage. And interestingly, Claire, I think I shared this when I first met you. One of the first meetings I had was with our CEO and our CTO, our designers, and the marketing people there. Now, if you go back 10 or 15 years, an initial induction to me joining the company, you wouldn't have had the sales and marketing people there. But they're so much part of this team. It is, as you said, so much more than IT. And we've got a marketing team who pulled out all the stops. It was a shame you couldn't join us at the Expo, but we had a monstrously successful Cloud Expo 2018, where we made something like 100 useful follow-up contacts, all because Cloud Gateway was marketed by the right people in the right way, and because we've got this core of professionals sitting behind it. So that's how I went about understanding what my job is and understanding what my role is. And now we've embarked on our journey where we've established the principles. We've drafted service level agreements. Again, old speak, but a service level agreement, you still need one between the company and the customer. It removes any ambiguity. People understand what you're talking about. I know the concept of SLAs has been around for 25 years, but it's still relevant. But that doesn't mean the SLA has to look like they did 25 years ago. And that's where you've mentioned this word evolving. We need to evolve to an environment where an SLA gives both parties actually what it needs in this current day and age. So we've drafted SLAs. We've got the service management principles drafted. I've drafted, documented, and flowcharted all of the support processes we need. We've gone out and bought what is considered by many people to be the industry best service management tool you can buy, ServiceNow, because we thought that says something about us. We've got a trained ServiceNow administrator who, as I speak here, is setting it up and integrating with our customers. So we're using the best tool we can get. We're recruiting the best people we can, and we've embarked on our journey. So that's kind of how we're going about it.
Sounds good. And I wonder if I could persuade you, Steve, just to turn your webcam around a little bit and show us what you've got on your whiteboard.
I wondered if you might want to do that. So again, if you can see that, that's my whiteboard sitting on my super duper orange wall. And on that, you can probably recognize, those of you who recognize it will see it is my VeriSM picture. I wanted to draw it up to understand in more detail what VeriSM needed. And by looking at it every day, I'm sure I'm absorbing that information for when I take my exam in May anyway. And what I tried to overlay on that, Claire, was, and I sent you a better, more professional looking version of that. I've tried to overlay the service management principles where they fit and to understand what we need to do in terms of define, produce, provide, and respond. So that's my working VeriSM sort of crib sheet there, sitting in my study with me.
And again, for us as authors, it's amazing to see this stuff being brought to life. So Steve's journey is going to be documented as a case study in the new VeriSM book. We're going to be hearing more about his organisation, more about how they're adopting VeriSM, and also by the time we publish, I think more about the results that they're seeing as well, because the next publication is due to be published in October. We'll finish the writing process at the end of June, and then it's due to be published in October. The time's kind of flown today, so we're coming to the end of our time. So Steve, I wonder if you've got any kind of final points that you want to make before we kind of wrap up this session.
Only that life's all about timing in many ways, isn't it? And at the time I was asked to make a complete career shift. I mean, at my age, I could probably have retired, but I was given this opportunity that sounded so exciting I didn't want to. And I'm presented with this opportunity, and straight away I thought, well, look, I've been doing ITIL for 25 years. That will plug some of these gaps, but it won't give me everything I want. And along came VeriSM. So as a final summary, VeriSM to me is the service management approach we need for the current climate, the current markets, and the current customers we've got. But it needs to evolve and develop, possibly a bit controversial, perhaps a bit more quickly than ITIL has, much as I'm passionate about ITIL. So I think we are in the right place at the right time, and we are adopting it in Cloud Gateway. We're already starting to see some of the benefits of it. But by the time, hopefully, we help you write the case study for the book, we'll be further along our journey. We'll have more information, and we will have more ammunition to say why it works so well for us as an early adopter.
That's awesome.
Thank you very much for letting me contribute to this forum.
Thank you absolutely for being one of our early adopters. Suzanne and Johan, any final thoughts that you want to share?
I think my final thought is to every service manager that's out there and every organization that's out there, is to allow yourself to think differently. You know, this is turning the service management a little bit on its edge, and it's okay to be uncomfortable at the beginning. But if you step back and look at the entire approach that we're saying, it's very stable, and it's very, what should I say? I almost want to say safe, because you're starting with what the organization is looking at and needing from the beginning by defining that governance, and then moving on and saying, what do I do well and what do I need to meet always the consumer need. So, you know, think differently, be okay with it, and really challenge the status quo to say, hey, we can be different and still be successful and engaging.
Thank you. And Johan, any final thoughts?
Maybe two things. The most important is I'll never hear the words VeriSM compliant. Because nobody's VeriSM implementation will look the same. That's number one. And number two is, you can start with what you have. You don't have to be different today. But if you follow the approach, you will be different tomorrow and the day after and the day after. And that's the nice thing about evolutionary change. It's not always fast. But it embeds itself in the organization. It becomes part of the fabric of organization. And it's sort of a guide to be who you are, or you can be, maybe. Yeah. So it's actually aspirational.
That's fantastic too. Thank you so much. So all that remains now is for me to say thank you to Johan, to Suzanne, to Steve for joining us today. If you want more information, verism.global, the website, is a brilliant place to start. And of course, interact with the VeriSM author team. We're all on Twitter, we're on LinkedIn. Talk to us, because this is an ongoing conversation. Our next episode is in just a few weeks, and we are joined by Steve Chambers, who is going to be talking to us about everything a service manager needs to know about the cloud. So that's definitely a don't miss episode. So thank you all for joining us today, and thank you to our panel, and see you on the next episode of the ITSM Crowd.
Thanks so much, Claire.